Imagine opening a toolbox to fix a leaky faucet, but instead of a wrench, you are staring at 500 different tools. Some look like hammers. Some look like surgical instruments. Some look like alien artifacts. This is exactly what happens when you open n8n for the first time. You see hundreds of integrations, obscure utilities, and cryptic icons. And most people freeze. They get stuck browsing instead of building. But here is the secret that the pros know and the beginners miss. You do not need the whole toolbox. Automation follows a brutal version of the 80-20 rule. In fact, if you master just 12 specific nodes, you can build 80% of the workflows you will ever need. Today, I am going to show you that blueprint. We are going to strip away the noise and focus on the core engine that powers everything. Before we touch a single node, we have to talk about where your automation lives, because this changes the game entirely. Most people start on the cloud. It is easy. It is convenient, but it is a trap. When you rent capacity, you are renting a ceiling. You pay for every execution. You worry about hitting limits. It turns your creativity into a budgeting spreadsheet. The professional approach is self-hosting. Whether it is on a VPS like Hostinger or your own server, owning the stack flips the equation. You are not paying for workflows anymore. You are paying for raw compute. You can run thousands of executions, heavy data syncs, and complex logic, and the price stays exactly the same. It changes you from a renter to an owner. Now let's look at the first pillar of the blueprint, the triggers. Forget the fancy AI starts for a second. The world runs on two things. First, the schedule trigger. Think of this as the alarm clock of the internet. It is boring, and that is why it is beautiful. It fires on a fixed timetable. Every morning at 8, every first of the month. It does not care if your laptop is closed. It does not care if you are asleep. If the schedule trigger is the alarm clock, the webhook is the doorbell. This is the second essential node. It gives you a unique URL that listens. When Stripe processes a payment or a user submits a form, they ring the doorbell. This is for event-driven automation. Mastering just these two. Schedule and webhook covers almost every trigger scenario you will ever face, time-based or event-based. Once the automation starts, it needs a brain. This brings us to the logic layer. The most basic unit is the if node. It is a binary gatekeeper. Is the order value over $100? If yes, go left to the VIP flow. If no, go right to standard processing. It sounds simple, but this is the difference between a dumb script and an intelligent system. But here's where beginners get tangled up. What happens when you have 5 different possibilities? New, shipped, canceled, returned, refunded. If you chain 5, if nodes together, you create a spaghetti monster that is impossible to debug. This is where the switch node enters the chat. It is the traffic cop of your workflow. The switch node evaluates a single field and routes data down unlimited parallel paths. It is clean. It is readable. And crucially, it allows you to use the merge node later. Imagine splitting your traffic, handling each specific status individually, and then merging them all back into a single stream to update your database. That is the architecture of a pro. Now let's talk about the thing that breaks most workflows. Data. A P is R messy. They rarely hand you a single, neat object. They throw arrays at you. A list of 50 leads. A batch of 20 orders. If you try to process that as a whole, your workflow will choke. You need to perform surgery. You need the split out node. Split out is the scalpel. It takes that big, bulky list and explodes it into individual items. Now you can run logic on every single lead independently. Filter out the bad ones. Enrich the good ones. But once you have atomized your data, you eventually need to put the pieces back together. That is where the aggregate node comes in. Think of aggregate as a mini data warehouse inside your workflow. You can take those processed items and roll them up into a daily summary. Total revenue, count of failures, this loop, split, process, aggregate, is the heartbeat of data engineering. It turns n8n from a simple glue tool into a legitimate data engine. But what happens when the visual nodes aren't enough? What happens when you hit that 5% edge case where the data is just weird? This is where the amateurs stop and the pros open the escape hatch, the code node. This is your refuse to be blocked button. You do not build your whole workflow here. But a few lines of JavaScript can fix a broken date format, flatten a nested JSON blob, or run a complex math formula that would take 10 visual nodes to replicate. It trades visual clarity for absolute flexibility. It is the tool you keep in your back pocket for when the road gets rough. So here's the reality. You can spend weeks learning every single integration in the library, or you can master these 12 nodes. Triggers for timing. Logic for decisions. Split and aggregate for data control. and code for the impossible. This isn't just about building faster. It is about building systems that don't break at 3 a.m. If you are ready to stop renting your automation and start owning it, look into self-hosting. It is the only way to run these pro workflows without hitting a wall. I've linked the resources below to get you started. If you want a deep dive into the code node specifically, let me know in the comments. Subscribe, and I will see you in the next build.